Hey guys, tonight we begin our soft and sleepy drift through one of the strangest dress codes in ancient history, when the Persian Empire decided, quite literally, to ban pants. You're in the bustling capital of Persepolis. There's sun on the white stone walls, you can hear sandals tapping on marble, and you, yes you, are sweating through your linen robe.so. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I always love reading your comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up in Persepolis, sometime in the 5th century BCE, and it is hot. Not just warm. Not, a dry desert breeze, hot. We're talking shimmering horizon. Bread bakes itself on the stone hot. You shuffle out of a stone chamber in the servants' quarters, one hand shielding your eyes, the other fanning the inside of your loose cotton tunic. The city is already alive with noise. Camels bleating. Merchants yelling. Somewhere, a priest chants to the rising sun. But you? You're mostly focused on one thought. Why is everyone wearing so much cloth? The Persian Empire at this point is rich, vast, and just a little obsessed with ceremony. Clothes aren't just about comfort, they're about status. And the more layers you wear, the more important you look. Or at least, the more you suffer with dignity. The nobles glide around in heavy layered robes. The priests drape themselves in symbolic fabrics that seem to defy airflow. And even the gardeners are somehow sweating under double-length linen. It's not great, and yet, no one is wearing pants, not the soldiers on guard, not the courtiers, not even the boys running messages between palace wings. Tunics, yes. Robes, yes. The occasional underskirt? Regrettably. But not a single pair of trousers. There's a reason for that, of course. See, in ancient Persia, trousers, or riding breeches, as some scholars call them, are associated with the nomadic tribes to the north and east. To the Achaemenid Persians, pants are the uniform of rough, uncivilized horsemen. Scythians, Sakas, Medes, people who hunt from horseback and don't build temples. People who squat at fires and roast meat on sticks. To wear pants in the Persian court is about as welcome as showing up to a state dinner in flip-flops. But, and this is important, you've heard about pants. Maybe you saw one once. A merchant, whispering about a new shipment of woolen leggings from Bactria. Or a soldier returning from the mountains, chuckling as he described leg bags that keep snow off the knees. It all sounds very scandalous, but also kind of practical. And so, here you are, wandering the palace courtyard, sticky with sweat and increasingly suspicious that your thighs should not be this exposed. You glance over at a bronze statue of King Darius the Great. He's standing tall, arms crossed, robes billowing in impossible symmetry. And you think privately, of course, surely he wasn't always comfortable in that thing. You pass the stables. The royal horses are being brushed and fed. The stable boys wear knee-length wraps and look like they'd rather be in anything else. You spot one boy, perhaps no older than 12, sneaking what looks suspiciously like a stitched leather pant leg behind a barrel. He meets your eyes. You nod. He nods. Nothing is said. This is the silent brotherhood of thigh chafing. Then comes the moment. A noble passes by, a senior advisor, dressed in crisp folds of gold and purple. He stops suddenly, squints, sniffs the air. Someone, he says, narrowing his eyes, smells like wool trousers. You freeze. The stable boy behind you freezes. A pigeon coos, loudly, as if to break the tension. The advisor moves on. You exhale. Welcome to Persepolis, where fashion is mandatory, pants are subversive, and sweating is just part of being stylish. As you return to your duties, you can't help but wonder who decides these things, anyway? And how long until someone powerful enough finally asks, "Is this really the best we can do?" The stable smells like hay, horse sweat, and something sour no one ever wants to talk about. You've just dodged a minor scandal involving secret leather trousers, and the morning sun is already rising higher. Its heat begins to climb the stone walls of Persepolis like ivy made of fire. You pause beside a carved column, trying to gather yourself. A servant girl hurries by with a tray of figs and flatbread. You consider asking her if figs can help with thigh chafing, but decide against it. It's too early for existential questions. Instead, you stroll toward the Hall of Apadana. That's where the elite meet, nobles, officials, and scholars debating important matters like border security, irrigation, and recently, oddly often, fashion. This morning's debate is unusually animated. From behind the tall cedar doors, you hear raised voices echoing over the cool marble. You slip in quietly, keeping to the edge of the room where courtiers and record keepers usually huddle. The hall is a forest of columns, 72 of them, to be precise, each carved with animals atop their capitals: bulls, lions, griffins. In the center stands a semicircle of advisors, surrounding none other than King Darius I himself, seated on his golden throne, listening. Or at least pretending to. Darius, known as the Great, conqueror of Egypt and builder of roads, is currently examining a bolt of cloth. Purple. Wool. Heavy. He lifts an eyebrow. Before him, a man dressed in dazzling green robes is pacing. "Sire," the man says, "this fabric, this foreign style, it is creeping into our court." He waves the fabric overhead dramatically. It droops like an exhausted flag. Bactrian merchants have been importing these leg tubes. And young men in the cavalry, your cavalry, may I add, are wearing them. Another advisor steps in. This one's calmer, older, his beard divided neatly into 3 cords and dusted with saffron. They claim it keeps the thighs warm in cold weather, he says. A few chuckles ripple through the court. One noble mimes a shiver. Someone mutters, "Cold thighs, soft minds." You suppress a smirk, but not everyone is laughing. A general from the eastern provinces clears his throat. "Sire, when riding for days through high mountain passes, robes are impractical. Our men freeze at night and trip over hemlines in battle. Breeches are functional." The word breeches lands in the chamber like a heretic's cough. Darius leans forward. His eyes sweep the room, pausing briefly on you. You look down. He's silent for a moment. Then he speaks, voice low and controlled. "Persia does not copy her enemies," he says. "We civilize them." A murmur of approval follows. He continues, "When we conquer wild horsemen, we do not dress like them. We teach them to wash, to read, to wear robes." The man with the bolt of cloth bows deeply. "Wise words, Majesty." But the general, his name might be Arsum, doesn't back down. "With respect, my king, the wind does not care for our dignity. My men have lost fingers. Frostbite claims knees before glory can. A robe, however noble, makes a poor blanket." Another pause. "Longer. Would you clothe us in courage, General?" Darius says dryly, "or fleece?" A few forced laughs. The room shifts uncomfortably, and then, a surprise. A small voice chimes in from the back of the court. It's Prince Xerxes, maybe 16, draped in rich crimson, lounging with one sandaled foot propped on a stone stool. "But they are rather comfortable," he says, picking a grape from a silver bowl. Everyone turns. Darius arches an eyebrow. Xerxes shrugs. "I tried a pair once. For hunting. They're breezy. In a good way." Gasps. Actual gasps. The silence is broken only by the soft clink of the grape falling back into the bowl. Darius says nothing. He stares at his son. At the courtiers. At the bolt of wool still drooping from the advisor's arm. Then he waves a hand. dismissing them all. Enough. Bring me the treasurer. We'll discuss silver weights instead. People shuffle out, heads bowed, muttering. You follow, heart pounding with secret delight. Did the prince just admit to pants? You don't know it yet, but this moment will be talked about in whispers for weeks. The time Prince Xerxes acknowledged leg tubes. Poets will find metaphors in it. Satirists will smuggle it into lampoons. And somewhere, a merchant is quietly increasing his order of Bactrian wool. Back in the servant quarters, later that night, you sit with a few others around a dim oil lamp. The cook's apprentice leans in, eyes wide. So did he say pants? You nod solemnly. He said breezy. There's a hush. One boy dares to whisper. Maybe he'll be the one to change things. You look out into the dark. Somewhere, a donkey brays. A wind lifts the hem of your robe, and just for a moment, you wonder what history might feel like when it finally reaches the knees. Night falls on Persepolis not with silence, but with a gentle humming, of sandals brushing stone, of lyres played in hidden courtyards, and of late conversations carried by warm desert winds. You lie awake on a woven mat, the stars overhead as sharp as chisel marks in obsidian. Your tunic sticks faintly to your side. Somewhere near the palace kitchens, someone is laughing too loudly. And yet, your mind is still tangled in the words from this morning. They're breezy. In a good way. A prince said that. A son of the king. In public. About pants that it's not a revolution. Not yet. But it's something. The next morning, you wake early and are summoned to the Hall of Scribes. An honor, technically, though the honor mostly involves grinding ink and fetching scrolls. You arrive to find the scribes in heated debate, not about laws nor treaties, but something more pressing. Do we write about the prince's comment? One asks, shaking a scroll like a disapproving teacher. If we record it, it becomes real. Another scribe, older, bald, and delightfully sarcastic, mutters, "Oh no, reality might get in the archive, God's forbid." They see you standing there, and a younger scribe pulls you aside. "Did you hear him?" he whispers. "Did he really say it?" You nod. He said breezy, in a good way. The scribe shudders, half thrilled, half horrified. "Write it down," says the bald one. "The archivists of the future will thank us." You think briefly about future historians, reading these words by lamplight. Would they even believe how much trouble one fabric choice could cause? You're dismissed early, and find yourself wandering the shaded alleys between the servant wings and the foreign embassies. That's where the interesting clothes happen. Envoys from distant lands come and go, and they do not always follow Persian dress codes. You pass a Babylonian with dark, curly hair, draped in blue embroidered silk, layers upon layers, but artful, like waves of a slow-moving river. Then a Lydian merchant, wearing something startling, trousers dyed saffron, with tight cuffs and an embroidered waistband. It looks comfortable. You can't stop staring. He notices. "You like?" he says in halting old Persian. "My wife make. Many pockets. Pockets that no one in Persepolis has ever said the word pocket with admiration before." Your eyes widen. Then you hear it. Hoofbeats. A unit of cavalry thunders past, their horses glossy, their helmets bronze. Most wear tunics, split at the thighs for movement. But one rider at the rear of the group definitely, is wearing trousers. You catch a glimpse beneath his armor, snug, faded wool, tucked into riding boots. You aren't sure whether to cheer or are you in to by midday. Word has spread. An edict is being discussed, not from Darius, but from one of his more fashionable wives, Queen Artystone, known for her silk collection and disapproval of stiff clothing on stiff men. Apparently, she has declared that in her wing of the palace, any man wearing trousers will be denied honey cakes for a week. It's not official law, but close. This triggers panic. By evening, 5 noble sons are seen sprinting to tailors, demanding emergency robe adjustments. One boy, rumored to be an artist, asks if leg veils count. The tailor tells him kindly to leave, as the sun dips below the stone walls. You wander back toward the royal garden, where shadows stretch like lazy cats, and the lotus ponds flicker with fireflies. You sit on the edge of a fountain and dip your feet into the cool water that a palace guard, older and off-duty, joins you. You hear the news? He asks, shaking his head. Pants. Imagine. What's next? Shoes with strings. You laugh. Wouldn't be worse than sandals and gravel. He nods. Still, you didn't hear this from me, but I wore some once. On patrol near the Caspian. Wind never touched my thighs. The silence that follows is warm, complicit, almost reverent. We're living in dangerous times, he jokes. Very well-ventilated ones. As night deepens, you make your way back through the torchlit halls of the palace. A stray cat slinks beside you. From somewhere up above, a flute plays a soft melody, rising into the night air like the breath of the city itself. And just as you reach the threshold of your sleeping quarters, you see it. A neatly folded pair of woolen trousers, left on your M.A.T.N.O. note. No explanation, just a silent offering. A test. A promise. You pick them up. They're heavier than expected. Sturdy. Well-stitched. And as you hold them to your chest, you whisper to the stars, breezy, in a good way. You don't wear the trousers the next day. You think about it. Oh, you definitely think about it. You stare at them, folded neatly on your mat, for a solid 10 minutes. You even hold them up against your legs, imagining what it might feel like to walk through the palace garden without your thighs slapping like fish in a clay pot. But no, not yet. Instead, you tuck them under your cot, hidden away like a contraband scroll. Because even though you're curious, you're also not interested in being publicly flogged for fashion. The palace, meanwhile, is experiencing a low-grade identity crisis. The prince's offhand remark has spun out like a pebble in a pond. Nobody's outright rebelling, of course, not yet. But you can feel it in the way people walk, the way they glance at each other's legs. There's a growing awareness, like the city is beginning to itch. That morning, you're assigned to the archive wing, cool, dark, and lined with scrolls thicker than your arm. You work alongside a young historian named Outlawed, who's been compiling records of non-standard dress across the empire. It's niche work, which is to say, nobody asked for it, but Outlawed is passionate. He shows you a clay tablet from the northwestern provinces, a scribbled report from a minor official. 3 soldiers arrived from the highlands. They wore leg fabric stitched to the ankle, claimed it helped climbing. No one knew what to do, so we gave them soup. You both stare at it, then burst into muffled laughter. I'm telling you, Outlawed says between giggles, one day this will be a scroll all its own. The Trouser Rebellion. You think it's a rebellion? You ask. No, he replies. But I think people are tired of pretending robes make them noble. The day drifts by, slow and dust-covered. You catalog images of old satraps. You make notes on fashion motifs from Susa. And you pretend, just a little, that you're not thinking about those trousers under your bed. That night, as the city cools, a messenger arrives at your quarters with a folded parchment. You are being summoned to serve refreshments at a royal banquet. This isn't unusual. You've done it before, holding trays of wine, offering dates, keeping your head bowed as the elite discuss politics and poetry. But tonight, the guest of honor is from Media, a highland province where, you've heard, pants are practically standard issue. You arrive in the grand hall just before moonrise. The floor is polished stone, cold beneath your feet. Pillars stretch upward like trees carved from moonlight. Incense curls from bronze bowls. And at the center of the feast, lounging like a sleepy panther, is the Median ambassador. He is, of course, wearing pants, soft, dark wool, tucked into boots, with silver stitching along the seams. They shimmer slightly when he crosses his legs. Gasps echo around the room. Not loud, but there. Someone coughs into their goblet. A priest suddenly finds his robe hem very interesting. You approach the ambassador with a tray of melon slices. He accepts one with a nod, then smiles at you. You're local? He asks. You nod. Then let me give you some advice, he says, voice smooth like a carved flute. Never trust a man whose knees you've never seen. You don't know what to say to that. You don't even know if it's wisdom or nonsense. But it stays with you. As you slip back into the shadows, you notice Prince Xerxes watching the ambassador from across the room. The prince isn't smiling, but he is thoughtful. That he taps a finger against his goblet. Once, twice. Then he leans over to whisper something to his attendant. You can't hear what's said, but a servant scurries away moments later. You return to your chamber past midnight. The moon is high, the wind is dry and sweet, and the city has settled into a soft murmur. You think about what the ambassador said. You think about Yared and his rebellion of robes. You think about knees. Then, you do something unexpected. You pull the trousers from beneath your bed, and, slowly, reverently, you put them on. They're snug, yes, but not unpleasant. They wrap your legs like firm handshakes. You walk a little. Test your stride. Sit. Stand. Crouch. Stretch. You feel supported. Protected. Dare you say it? Empowered. You step outside into the courtyard, where the moonlight spills like cream across the flagstones. There's no one around. Just the night, the stars, and the sound of your footsteps. You don't feel like a rebel. You feel like someone who's finally done scratching. And from the far end of the courtyard, almost lost in the dark, you swear you see another figure, also walking, also wearing pants. You don't speak. You just nod. The other figure nods back. A silent, secret society, built on britches. You're assigned to the cavalry stables at sunrise, a punishment, possibly, or perhaps a reward from the gods, depending on how you feel about horses. The smell hits you before you even enter. Hay, manure, leather, and sweat, mixed in equal measure. But also the faint, telltale musk of wool. Trousers are here. Quietly, persistently. The cavalrymen don't wear them openly yet. Not most of them. But there are signs. A trouser leg poking from under a robe. A wrapped sash that covers just a bit too much. One soldier, clearly in defiance, is wearing his over the robe like a belt gone rogue. You're sent to assist the quartermaster, a one-eyed man named Artavan who communicates mostly in grunts. He has a ledger thicker than your thigh and the temper of an underfed lion. You help him count saddles, polish helmets, and feed the elephants. Yes, elephants. Persia has them. Because sometimes a warhorse just isn't enough. That's where you overhear the conversation. Two captains, standing beside a map of the Caucasus Mountains, are arguing about logistics. Not weapons. Not food. Clothing. I'm telling you, we can't climb through mountain passes and floor-length ropes. One snaps. We'll be tangled in the underbrush before we hit the ridge. The other shakes his head. The king says robes preserve dignity. Dignity inspires fear. Fear is useful, the first replies. But so is not freezing to death. They go back and forth, mobility versus morale, tradition versus terrain. Eventually, one mutters the unthinkable. We should draft a proposal. Official campaign trousers. You nearly drop a bundle of saddle straps. They want to write a formal proposal to legalize pants for military use. You wonder what such a document would look like. To His Supreme Majesty Darius, King of Kings, we humbly request permission to cover our legs separately. You stifle a laugh. Later that day, back in the servant wing, you find Yared, your historian friend, and tell him everything. They're drafting a scroll, you say breathlessly. For campaign pants. Yared's eyes light up. This is it. The hinge of history. Today it's cavalry. Tomorrow? Courtiers. You both sit beside a brazier, grinning like children who've discovered fire. And then you're summoned. Not to the stables. Not to the scroll house. To the palace itself. An official message, sealed in gold wax, calls you to appear before the High Tailor of the Inner Court. Now, let's pause here. Most people don't even know the palace has a High Tailor. But it does. He, or she, as in this case, is the final authority on drapery, folds, linings, and seasonal pleats. She decides which colors are court-appropriate. She once been green for 4 years because it made the Queen's parrot anxious. You find yourself standing before her in a room of floating silks, as if the air itself is stitched. She doesn't look up from her embroidery. You were seen, she says, wearing contraband. Your mouth goes dry. I wasn't, she raises a hand. You stop talking. It was after hours, she says. You were alone. You showed restraint. But the breeches were visible. Confirm? Yes. She sets aside her work and finally meets your eyes. You have good legs, she says, matter-of-factly. Long balanced. Suited for the cut. You blink. I am authorizing you, she continues, to assist with the pattern archive. We're updating the master robe diagrams. Quietly. For optional segmentation. If, one day, breeches are permitted, you're not fired. You're promoted into a secret circle of tailoring resistance. That evening, you enter a room that looks more like a temple than a workshop. Scrolls upon scrolls. Silk swatches pinned like butterflies. Mannequins dressed in experimental hybrids. Robes with vents, tunics with reinforced knees, things with zippers. No one knows what a zipper is. It's probably magical. You're handed a stylus and assigned to a diagram titled Formal Garment, Bipartite Option, Cavalry Variant. You can't believe it. You're helping design Persian pants. You go to bed late that night, mind spinning with pleats and panels. The wind through your chamber is cool, gentle, and you sleep like a soldier in silk armor. The air turns colder by the day. Autumn doesn't announce itself loudly in Persepolis. It tiptoes in on morning breezes, on the longer shadows cast by palace columns, and on the faint but growing panic among the robe wearers. You feel it first when washing linens in the courtyard. The breeze that once offered relief now cuts against your shins. And the sandstone tiles that scorched your soles in summer? They now leach warmth like jealous ghosts. Inside the tailoring sanctum, whispers of rebellion have become folded drafts. You and the others, an awkward mix of court stylists, military aides, and one mysterious eunuch who speaks only in measurements, have completed 6 alternate designs. You've named them things like Layered Mobility Option I and Adaptive Lower Garment, Dignified Crotch Division. But none of it means anything unless it's worn. And for that, you need allies. That's why you find yourself one morning following Prince Xerxes' personal falconer down a side corridor to a rarely used sunroom. Inside, draped across cushions and speaking softly over a board game of pebbles and lines, sits the prince. He looks up as you enter. You're the one who laughed at the ambassador's pants. You freeze. He smiles. Don't worry. I did too. But mine was on the inside. You bow low, unsure of the protocol when speaking to someone both imperial and deeply stylish. I've seen the drafts, he continues. The cavalry line? Elegant. Subversive. Also functional. He gestures toward a folded garment beside him. It's one of your prototypes. I want 10 of these. Tailored. Black wool. Decorative stitching on the cuff. You hesitate. Well, will His Majesty allow it? Xerxes' grin widens. Who said they're for me? Oh. Decoys. Elite guards. Musicians. Perhaps even dancers. A quiet invasion of pant legs. He stands, stretches, then adds, we'll wear them to the bonfire. Next moon. The bonfire is an old court tradition, a seasonal gathering held on the first night when mountain frost is visible from the palace roof. Nobles drink mulled wine. Musicians play sleepy flutes. Courtiers compete in the ancient sport of looking pious while gossiping that you've never been before. This year, you will go, not as a servant, but as a tailor's aide. That's practically nobility, minus the wealth and inheritance. The night of the fire arrives. The garden is full of golden lamplight and politely strained laughter. The stars are sharp. The breeze is unapologetic. And then they arrive, 10 figures, moving in a crescent through the crowd. Their tunics are short, their boots high, their legs unmistakably clothed. Gasps. Not screams, not outrage, but gasps, followed by the low murmur of 100 minds recalibrating their expectations of what a courtly silhouette includes. Queen Artystone glares. One of her parrots caws in horror, but Xerxes simply raises a goblet and toasts the fire. To warmth. He says that a few bold nobles echo him. To warmth. By midnight, no one talks of anything else. You wander to the edge of the garden, where a low brazier glows and a few musicians warm their hands. One of the guards, clad in prototype trousers, nods at you. These don't ride up when I kneel, he says with reverence. You nod back, speechless. That's when the fire pit erupts in a sudden wave of sparks. Someone's thrown cedar shavings onto the coals. The light flashes across the garden like daylight, illuminating every robe, every turban, and, most importantly, every covered need. At a court historian nearby mutters, this will be remembered as the night of the hidden shin. It has begun. Morning after the bonfire is always quiet. Usually, it's because of wine. Too much of it. Court nobles rising late, eyes swollen, voices hushed. But this year, it's something else. Something quieter, deeper. A new kind of hangover, not from drink, but from daring. You feel it in the hallway glances, in the servant kitchens, in the way palace guards no longer walk with full robe swirl confidence, but with a hint of awareness, as though they're suddenly aware of their knees as parts of the body that could be hugged individually. You pass by the outer archive wing where two scribes sit over a fresh clay tablet. One asks, how do you spell insurrection, but in the context of hemline reform? You smile and keep walking. It turns out Xerxes' 10 brave legs weren't chosen randomly. He had them appear in patterns, one every 10 guests, one near the musicians, one standing behind the wine casks. It wasn't fashion, it was formation, pants as strategy. But the true test comes that afternoon, when King Darius returns from a 3-day temple retreat. He'd been meditating, fasting, purifying himself with incense and goat's milk. In other words, blissfully unaware. He enters the palace like thunder, robes freshly laundered, beard re-oiled, sandals polished to blinding white. You're present in the corridor when he spots his first unauthorized trouser. It belongs to the flute player from the night before. A gentleman, soft-spoken, playing a tune called Lotus Falling in Spring. The king stops, squints, says nothing, just stares. The tune dies mid-measure. A servant drops a tray somewhere in the distance. And then, Darius turns, walks on, and says only, "I trust the fires burned well." That's it. No scolding, no decree, no thunderous condemnation, which, in the royal court, is practically a blessing. By evening, the debate has shifted. Not, should we ban pants, but should they be dyed court colors? In the tailoring sanctum, you help finalize design number 4, a flowing tunic with side vents and optional leg wraps in indigo. The eunuch nods in approval, and for the first time, says a single word, graceful. Later that night, as moonlight filters through your lattice window, you hear the city humming, not with bells or drums, but whispers. Stories. That the king said nothing. That Xerxes led a legged rebellion. That someone at the bonfire could kneel without exposing their dignity. You smile, stretch beneath your thin blanket, and whisper to yourself, graceful. The pants revolution isn't over, but it's standing tall. At first, the rumors are flattering. They call it the Velvet Rebellion, the breeches movement. Some even go so far as to name it the Gentle Split, a phrase that makes you cough into your tea. You find copies of anonymous poems circulating in the servant halls. Most are badly rhymed, some barely scan, but they all sing praises to freedom of movement and air beneath one's dignity. One especially daring verse ends with, "Let legs no longer march in shame, but stride apart in glory's name." Yared, naturally, is thrilled. He has begun a new scroll titled The Social Semantics of Bicameral Garment Evolution, which he insists is catchy. You nod politely while stitching hemline samples. But not everyone is pleased. At a morning council, Queen Artistone's voice echoes through the marble dome of the women's court. This is not a republic of tailors. It is an empire of order. She has banned her attendants from even discussing bifurcated clothing. One woman, found with a drawing of experimental legwear, was reassigned to clean the outer elephant pens. You start to worry, not for yourself. You've kept a low profile, but for the movement. It's growing. Fast. Perhaps too fast. Even Prince Xerxes seems concerned. At a private garden breakfast, he leans over to whisper, "We may need to slow the hemline." He's joking, but only barely. Then, one afternoon, the inevitable happens. A minor noble, cousin to someone, friend of someone else, shows up at court not just wearing trousers, but striding around the ceremonial pool in bright crimson breeches tucked into sandals. He stands proudly beside a fig tree, arms folded, proclaiming himself an ambassador of modernity. It does not go well. Queen Artistone faints. A priest drops his scroll in horror. The king, informed mid-chess game, sets down his pawn and sighs deeply. The noble is not executed, but he is escorted out of the palace and quietly reassigned to oversee melon logistics in the eastern provinces. A message has been sent. The fashion-forward falter. Momentum stumbles. Whispers rise. Has the movement gone too far? In the tailoring sanctum, silence rules. The eunuch stops sketching. A fabric cutter mutters something about too many knees too soon. Even you hesitate. That night, you fold your prototype breeches and place them carefully into a clay jar, sealed with wax. Hidden for now. but not forgotten. Because despite the backlash, something has changed. No one can unsee what's been seen. Legs have walked too far. And as you drift to sleep, robe tucked around your legs like a reminder, you dream not of rebellion or glory, but of walking, cool and free, down a breeze-filled corridor in absolute comfort. Persepolis goes quiet. Not silent, exactly. Merchants still shout, children still chase goats through the alleys, and someone still plays flute badly near the north gate, but there's a tension in the seams of things. Like a garment pulled too tight across the chest. The wrong stitch, and it all might tear. After the scandal of the crimson breeches, the court retreats into cautious conservatism. The phrase, above the ankle, becomes a whispered warning. Tailors are told to realign with heritage. New robes are stitched with extra length, as if to cover the very memory of change. Prince Xerxes disappears for a week. Rumor says he's in Susa. Others claim he's in his room, sulking with a scroll of Sogdian poetry and 3 mangoes. No one is sure. You, meanwhile, return to your duties in the scroll hall. The breeches are back in their clay jar, sealed beneath your cot. But you feel them there, like a heartbeat in the floor. Yored still works beside you, quieter now. He no longer jokes about knee rights. His latest scroll is titled Drapery Compliance Metrics and Post-Uprising Eras. It is, frankly, very dull. He knows it. You know it. Everyone pretends. One evening, a courier arrives. A short note. A seal. A summons. It's from the prince. You're to meet him in the old observatory at moonrise. You arrive to find the tower dimly lit, the stars above shockingly clear. Xerxes stands by a dusty table, looking thinner. Not weak, just sharpened. I made a mistake, he says without turning. I let fashion run ahead of politics. You say nothing. I thought if we made it look normal enough, no one would notice it was revolutionary. I forgot. Nothing threatens tradition more than quiet comfort. He turns. His robes are long again, court appropriate. But beneath the hem, you spot it. A sliver of fabric. Stitched. Tapered. Wool. He sees you looking. They can ban trousers, he says softly. But they can't uninvent them. You smile. Besides, he adds, my father wore them once. On a mountain patrol. Said nothing. But I saw. And I remembered. You sit beside him, staring out at the city. Below, Persepolis glows like an ember in the dark. The streets breathe in silence. The palace sleeps, unaware. But you and Xerxes sit there, warm, comfortable, and for the first time in days, laughing quietly. Because you both know, beneath the silence, something still walks. And it wears pants. You're reassigned to a supply caravan headed to Ecbatana, that it's not exile, not exactly. More like strategic rotation. The court needs fewer eyes on your knees. And fewer knees in general. Ecbatana lies in the northern highlands, where the air bites and the wind slices. Robes, so graceful in Persepolis, now flap uselessly around your legs like wet laundry. The journey takes you through dry plains, cedar forests, and mountain passes already dusted with snow. You ride beside the supply master, a broad-shouldered woman named Tirza, who chews cardamom pods like their currency. You one of those breeches people? She asks one morning, blunt as stone. You hesitate, then nod. She grunts. Good. Robes are for statues. That night, huddled around a fire near a copse of pines, Tirza opens a pack and hands you a pair of lined trousers, dark, patched, worn by time. These saved my life on the Gorgon front, she says. Take M. You do. And for the first time since the bonfire, you wear pants again in public. No whispers. No judgment. Just grateful knees to Ecbatana. The welcome is chillier than the air. The satrap there, an elderly man who layers his robes like architectural folds, grumbles about fashionable rebellion. But even he can't argue with practicality. You help distribute winter gear to outer garrisons. Among the parcels, cloaks, boots, and yes, trousers, officially listed as bifurcated leg wraps. Bureaucracy is a language of denial. One morning, a messenger arrives from Persepolis, a scroll sealed in lapis lazuli. Prince Xerxes has issued a quiet memorandum. Where practical needs exceed formal custom, garments of segmented legwear may be worn with discretion. It's not a law, not even a decree, but it's everything. You stand on a ridge above the camp, watching soldiers move below, robes, cloaks, tunics, and now legs, walking independently, comfortably. The breeze no longer bites. The silence no longer stings. Something is shifting again, and this time, it walks on two warm, covered feet. You return to Persepolis in late winter, just as the almond blossoms begin to wake. The journey is long, the kind that peels away layers of self you didn't realize you'd grown. You travel with 2 traders, a sleepy goat, and 5 barrels of dried figs. You sleep on rocks, on straw, on one occasion inside a broken cart with wheels older than Xerxes' ambitions. But when you crest the final hill and see the capital, its towers soft with morning haze, the gates yawning open like a lion mid-stretch, you feel something strange. You missed it. Inside the city, things have changed. Subtly, not visibly, not loudly, but like threads in a new seam. Palace guards now wear split robes for mounted readiness. Archers, particularly those posted along the western walls, have adopted leg-tucked tunics for better draw stance. And in the marketplace, a cloth merchant sells something called winter riders, dyed indigo and cut at the knee. You wander back to the tailor's sanctum. The eunuch nods. He started speaking again, only in color names, but still, Obsidian, he says when he sees you. You nod. It feels like a greeting. Your red is back to smiling. He's abandoned his compliance metrics scroll in favor of a far livelier project, an illustrated manuscript titled The Two-Legged Revolution, A History of Quiet Apparel. Too obvious? He asks. You grin. Too perfect. That evening, you receive a summons. No wax seal this time, just a folded note slipped under your door. It reads, North Tower. Midnight. We're the warm ones. You know who it's from. The tower is mostly abandoned, used long ago for stargazing, now mostly home to wind and old parchment. But when you push open the heavy wooden door, you find a circle of people waiting. Not rebels. Not nobles. Just people. A cook. A junior scribe, one of the cavalrymen from the prototype squad, even a musician, flute player, formerly terrified. Each one wears some version of breeches. Not flashy, not crimson, just normal. Prince Xerxes is last to arrive. No fanfare, no crown, just a thick wool coat and boots muddy with real travel. We aren't here to make declarations, he says. We're here to prepare. You sit on a rug between the cook and a cavalryman. There's tea, flatbread, soft laughter. Prepare for what? Someone asks. Xerxes sips his tea. For the day my father no longer reigns. The room stills. It's not mutiny. It's inevitability. The kind of thing everyone knows but never says aloud. I won't make war on tradition, he adds. But I will make it walk faster. He unrolls a new scroll. Official court uniform for spring ceremonies, he says, holding it up, and there it is. A new silhouette. Balanced, robe above, tailored below, decorative sash, high collar, tapered ankles, optional leg segmentation, he says. A ripple of excitement moves through the room. You lean closer. The design is elegant, thoughtful, not a shout, but a whisper that walks confidently into the future. Obsidian, the eunuch murmurs, approvingly. As you leave the tower, dawn begins to stretch pale fingers across the sky. The city below is still asleep, roofs dusted with the season's last frost. You think back to the start of it all. A boy, a fire, a pair of breeches hidden under a cot, and now a prince with a plan. A movement stitched into the very seams of empire, and you still just a tailor's aide, but also something more. You smile as your own boots crunch on frost. The world is changing. One leg at a time. Spring arrives with trumpets, not literal ones, though someone does take up trumpet lessons near the northern gate and won't stop practicing scales. But across Persepolis, the shift is unmistakable. The air turns bright. Figs ripen, robes lighten, and still, the breeze brings with it that lingering question. Will it be this season? Inside the tailoring sanctum, the scroll with Prince Xerxes' new court uniform lies unrolled on the central table. It's already been copied 5 times, each traced on a thin goat vellum and smoothed by stone. The phrase, optional leg segmentation, now glows like prophecy. You help with fittings. Quiet ones. Trusted clients only. A satrap's niece. The palace harpist. Even the young vizier in training, who whispers, "Don't laugh. I've got dancer thighs." And through it all, you wait for the announcement. The official spring wardrobe decree, issued every year from the Queen Mother's Hall and followed like law. If the decree accepts segmented lower garments, the gates swing open. If it doesn't, well, the announcement is to be delivered at the Spring Equinox Festival 3 days from now at the Temple of Eternal Fires, a place steeped in ceremony, incense, and intimidating echoes. You prepare. You select your cleanest tunic, your most polished sandals, and, beneath it all, your finest trousers. Not flashy, not defiant, just yours. The morning of the festival dawns sharp and clear. A blue sky you want to fold up and wear. The entire city seems to exhale as the parade begins. Dancers, fire-bearers, flower-hurling children with sticky fingers. You and Yared sit near the back of the temple square, surrounded by nobles, dignitaries, and at least 3 peacocks that someone insists are sacred. Then comes the moment. Queen Artystone steps onto the dais. Her robes, as ever, are magnificent, layered like history, beaded like rainfall. She raises one hand. By decree of the royal court, she begins, spring attire shall consist of, and she pauses. This is unusual. She glances toward Prince Xerxes, who stands nearby. Calm but alert, she continues, of garments suitable for the season, inclusive of both traditional robes and regulated segmentations where function allows. Gasps. Muted applause. A peacock screeches. You and Yared turn to each other, mouths open. It's in, he whispers. It's real. You reply. The Tailoring Guild releases the decree across the city that same afternoon. Shops hang new banners. Split comfort. Spring approved. The term Function Flex formal wear begins appearing on labels. BY evening. Soldiers patrol in crisp wrap breeches. Courtiers appear in dual-paneled gala robes. Even Queen Artystone's third parrot receives a tiny leg wrap in seasonal solidarity. That night, the Tailoring Sanctum hosts its first ever celebration. No wine, just strong tea. No dancing, just lots of cautious, joyful leg movement. The eunuch lifts his teacup. To the cut, he says solemnly. To the cut. Everyone echoes. You return to your quarters late, trousers still crisp from pride. As you stretch out on your mat, moonlight washing over the floor, you smile. The road is long, but tonight, Your legs walk freely along it. By mid-spring, even the temples are whispering about trousers, not chanting, of course. That would be heretical. But in the pause between incense rituals and the rustle of sandaled feet down marble halls, something stirs. You're summoned to the temple of Ahura Mazda, not as a worshiper, but as a cloth consultant. It's strange enough to be called into a sacred sanctuary for tailoring. Stranger still when you realize the request came not from a priest, but from the fire marshal, the man in charge of flame maintenance across the entire religious complex. You meet him in a courtyard flanked by white columns. His name is Zaid. His beard is thick. His eyebrows thicker. He wears a ceremonial robe so voluminous he disappears behind it when he sighs. "I'm tired of singeing my hem," he says without preamble. You blink. "Sometimes," he adds, voice a low rumble, the flame leaps. "I bend. I twist. My knees protest. My dignity tangles. You understand." You nod. You do understand. He gestures toward a bundle wrapped in cloth. "Make me something I can wear beneath this. Hidden. Sacred. But movable." You accept the challenge. In secret, of course. The temple can't be seen as endorsing sartorial heresy. What follows is a week of hushed fittings, shadowed measurements, and delicate balancing between tradition and innovation. You stitch a pair of fire-safe woolen trousers, dyed temple gray, reinforced at the knees. When Zaid tries them on, he bends at the waist, touches the ground, and miracle of miracles, his robe does not ripple. He beams. Later that week, word spreads. Acolytes begin requesting inner sanctum breeches. Some want them quilted, others embroidered with fire motifs. One particularly bold monk asks if they come in saffron. You realize something. The temple, the most conservative corner of the empire, is now experimenting. Prince Xerxes hears of this and invites you to a private viewing of his spring court ensemble. It's magnificent. Layered indigo, golden cuffs, and beneath it all, the court's first public royal trousers. They shimmer. Subtly. "You like them?" he asks. You nod. "They're called the Pathfinders," he says. "Because they're walking into history." He smiles. "You're the one who stitched the fire marshal's pants, right?" You blink. "How?" "Let's just say incense smoke carries gossip better than parchment." You laugh. "Because it's true. That night, as you pass through the city square, you see 3 street performers balancing on barrels. Each wears stage breeches. Patterned, bold, ridiculous. They tumble, bow, and wave. And somewhere in the crowd, a small child points and asks, "Mama, can I wear leg drapes like them?" And the mother smiles. "Only if you practice balance first." You walk home with a full heart. What began as quiet defiance is becoming a celebration, not rebellion, not revolution, but a revelation that legs, long bound, may walk freely and still walk with grace. You receive the invitation tucked inside a folded napkin. At first, you think it's a mistake, a prank. But there it is, gold ink, imperial seal, and 3 almost sacred words, Royal Wedding Committee. Specifically, you've been summoned as one of 3 tailors to advise on ceremonial garments for the bride's procession. Not the bride herself, of course. Her robes are a matter of divine tradition, but the entourage, the musicians, the torchbearers, and the 40 attendants who will walk her through the south garden beneath canopies of rose petals and harp music. You arrive at the planning chambers just as Queen Artystone is finishing a monologue about proper silk and drape to petal ratios. Prince Xerxes, seated nearby, looks both amused and slightly haunted. He sees you, smiles, and gestures you forward. The attendants, he says, are expected to walk in step for 2 hours. Through gravel, uphill, while carrying floral garlands. He pauses. They'd like to do it in dignity, and without shin blisters. You nod. You're led to the robe archive, 10 generations of ceremonial patterns, stored on scrolls so old they crumble when sneezed near. You spend hours studying cuts, weights, lengths. You sketch. You swatch. You whisper ancient garment blessings under your breath, just in case. And then you design a soft tunic, high-slit robe overlay, linen silk blend for airflow. And beneath, trousers, pale, embroidered, breathable, hidden, but powerful. You present the ensemble to the committee. There's silence. Then a priest clears his throat and mutters, "Elegant." Queen Artystone glares, but says nothing. It is approved. The day of the wedding dawns with lavender skies and music that seems to float from the stones themselves. Crowds gather. Pigeons wear ribbons. A parrot screams Mazel Tov, wrong culture, but appreciated. The bride glides like moonlight. But it's the attendants, 40 in perfect formation, steps crisp, robes fluttering just high enough to reveal the twin lines of pale trousers beneath, who steal breath, not because it's shocking, but because it works. They move with ease, grace, confidence. Even the queen watches in still silence. Later, back at the tailoring sanctum, Yared bursts in, scroll in hand. They're calling it the procession of two paths, he says breathlessly. A poetic reference to both marriage and trouser legs. It's official court poetry. You laugh, because you stitched it, because it happened, because once you had breeches under a bed. Now, they walk beneath garlands in front of half the empire. That night, the eunuch presents you with a wrapped gift, a silk sash, deep blue, embroidered with tiny stepping feet. Wear it when you walk, he says, and so you do. You're at the courtyard well, halfway through hauling a bucket of laundry water, when the horns sound. Not local horns. These are lower, fuller, stretched taut with foreign brass. You know the sound. So does everyone else. That it means. Invoice. The courtyard empties faster than a parrot can insult someone's sandals. You leave your bucket mid-slosh and slip around the corner, finding a good vantage near the colonnade. They arrive in a column of polished hooves and colorful dust. The ambassadors of Bactria, tall, solemn, wearing fur-trimmed cloaks, and, most remarkably, trousers so wide they could double as hammocks. Each step is a poetic billow. The crowd watches in stunned silence. Even the queen's parrot mutters something impolite. Prince Xerxes greets them with his usual charm, but you see it. The flicker of competitive curiosity. Later that afternoon, you are summoned to a private reception. Wine, fruits, and diplomacy fill the room like a tightly stitched tapestry. The Bactrian ambassador, a soft-spoken man named Ulfin, gestures at his legwear. These are cloud pants, he says, woven from mountain goats, worn by our horse archers and most festive uncles. Prince Xerxes nods slowly. They breathe remarkably. Ulfin beams, and they float. Watch. He lifts one leg and pirouettes, cloak spinning. A hush falls. A scribe faints. And just like that, the game changes. You're tasked, that night, with adapting the Bactrian silhouette for court sensibilities. The workshop is electric. Scrolls fly. Drafts multiply. The eunuch whispers, volume is drama. 2 days later, you unveil a new design. The River Bloom, a split-leg pant with subtle pleats, decorated cuffs, and a floating outer robe. Xerxes wears them to a poetry reading. The poet forgets their lines by week's end. The term court breezes is coined. Bactrian style merges with Persian form. Traders begin selling replicas in the market for lounging, leaping, and light rebellion. You pass Ulfin in the hall one morning. He bows, then says, I hear they've started a dance, called the Breech Waltz. You nod. It's not bad. He smiles. You like what we wear for weddings. You groan, but deep down, you're already sketching. You're summoned before dawn to the palace stables, still bleary-eyed. You arrive expecting torn saddle straps or a robe emergency involving an overconfident general and a goat. Instead, you find Prince Xerxes, dressed in riding leathers and a tunic the color of cedar bark. We're going hunting, he says. You blink. We? He smirks. You'll help the tailors adjust the riding uniforms. There's to be experimentation. Moments later, you're trotting north with an entourage of 50 archers, scouts, servants, and one over-decorated poet whose only job is to observe the grace of hoof against moss. The goal: 3 days in the royal forest. The reality: a field test for the court's new huntwear collection. You help oversee the distribution of the prototypes. Each rider receives a pair of high-waisted breeches, slit for flexibility, reinforced at the inner thigh with quilted wool. Some include ankle flares. Others, daringly, feature hidden pockets, a concept so radical it causes one advisor to faint. Day 1 begins with laughter. Breeches are worn. Mounts are mounted. The poet immediately falls off his horse. But soon, the utility of your work becomes evident in ode tripping. No tangled hems. Riders move freely. The prince leaps from a boulder with alarming grace. At night, under a canopy of stars, the prince calls for stories. Between tales of jackals and celestial boars, conversation drifts back to the breeches. These are more than clothes, says Tirza, the caravan leader. They're armor against absurdity. Someone raises a toast to unbound knees. By the third morning, you catch glimpses of casual comfort. A scout stretching freely, a guard tying her boot without a robe hike. The forest watches silently, ancient and curious. Then, the real test arrives. A boar, huge, furious, smelling like vinegar and moss. It charges. 3 riders split left. 2 dive into the underbrush. The prince, calm as ever, circles on horseback, swings down, and plants a spear through the bramble. The crowd cheers. The boar collapses. But no one's talking about the kill, they're talking about the jump. A leap, they say. A pivot. A landing that would have tangled any traditional hem in a mess of mud and tragedy. But not this time. This time, he landed clean. Balanced. Breached. That night, by the fire, you stitch a small red mark onto the inside cuff of the prince's pants. A quiet emblem. A hunter's NOD. No one notices, except the eunuch. He nods once, murmurs, precision, and goes back to sipping pine tea. As you fall asleep beneath the trees, listening to owls and distant laughter, you realize what began as resistance has become ritual, and what was once hidden under robes now walks proudly through forests. Royal banquets are supposed to be about diplomacy, food, music, veiled insults wrapped in honeyed compliments. This is the usual script. But tonight's banquet feels different. Not just because the date marks the spring equinox and the king's 3rd wedding anniversary, but because of what's happening beneath the tables. You arrive early with the tailoring team, helping final check every cuff, sash, and pleat. Each plate glimmers with rose gold edges. Each cushion has been fluffed by no fewer than 3 royal servants, and each guest is a fashion powder keg. You spot it immediately, across the room, seated beneath a fresco of Ahura Mazda, is General Orontes. He is wearing traditional robes. Floor-length, monochrome, unbending, but beside him, his grandson, barely 15, is in full ceremonial court wear, with slim-legged trousers peeking out from beneath a side-slit tunic. Gasps have not yet begun, but the murmurs are percolating. Prince Xerxes glides in, dressed in obsidian black double layers. The design you sketched just a month ago, understated. Regal. And yes, pantsed. The king enters last, robes. As always. But his eyes scan the room, and for a moment, just a moment, you think you see his gaze settle on someone's neatly hemmed ankle. Dinner begins. Spiced lamb, saffron rice, dates so soft they melt on contact. But no one is chewing if they're watching. Gauging, measuring the room, and each other. Across the table, a minor satrap crosses his legs, and in doing so, reveals everything. A full view of patterned breeches stitched with the royal crest that a woman near the head table chokes on a figure the music falters. But Prince Xerxes raises his goblet and says, "To evolution." It's subtle, but devastating that Tio has left. A court poet visibly melts into her shawl. The king sips his wine. Doesn't react. But he doesn't stop at either point one by one. Conversation resumes. But something has shifted. The trousers are not hidden now. They are acknowledged, and that's the revolution. You sit beside your Red, who has begun sketching live reactions in the margins of a napkin. The eunuch leans over and mutters, "Velvet by summer." You'll see. The meal ends with saffron cakes and one final toast, from the queen herself, to beauty, to grace, and, she pauses, letting the room hush, to garments that serve their wearers with dignity. She raises her glass. You hold your breath. She does not clarify, which, in court terms, is endorsement. You walk home under a lantern-lit sky. Behind you, in the echo of clinking cups and shifting seats, you feel the empire take one quiet, irreversible step toward the future point one leg at a time. 3 weeks later, you're jolted awake before sunrise, not by drums, not by pigeons, but by Prince Xerxes himself. He's standing at your doorway, wrapped in a travel cloak, grinning like someone who just discovered a new flavor of melon. "We're going on a trip," he says. Diplomatic, rural, casual. You rub your eyes. Casual diplomacy? He winks. Best kind. By noon, you're bouncing in a carriage beside a spice official and a man whose only job is to carry rare cucumbers. Your destination? Nisa, a northern district known for onions, sheep, and stubborn village elders who still refer to Darius as the new guy. You arrive after 2 days of dusty roads and oddly informative goat gossip. The village square is simple: a well, 3 benches, and a mural of a Hura Mazda that appears to have been touched up by someone with a fishbone. The elders greet the prince with polite formality and suspicious brows. But what gets their real attention? His pants, they're linen, loosely woven, cuffed neatly, dust-stained, but clearly regal. One elder squints. "Those are they for riding?" Xerxes smiles. "For walking, climbing, sitting long hours listening to wise counsel." The flattery works. So do the pants. Within an hour, discussions begin, not about taxes, as expected, but fabrics. What thread count? Is that stitching or sorcery? Can we import? You watch in awe as land disputes are paused in favor of tailoring talk. One elder even offers to trade 2 goats and a cask of fig wine for those leg tubes. Later that night, seated around a fire on woven mats, you're handed a bowl of lentil stew and a bundle of local wool. One elder leans in. "Will you teach us the pattern?" You do that on the 3rd morning. As the delegation prepares to leave, 12 villagers gather to send you off. 8 of them now wearing experimental trousers. Awkward, baggy, glorious, As your carriage rolls away, one boy waves and shouts, "Tell the king he can send more leg cloth anytime." Xerxes leans back, eyes twinkling. "Do you realize what just happened?" he asks. "Fabric diplomacy? You offered," he nods. "The softest revolution." You return to Persepolis dusty, tired, and more certain than ever. Pants have crossed borders, not just clothing, but language that a lightweight, foldable, sewn in, and most importantly, wearable dialogue. The sculpture commission begins innocently enough. Prince Xerxes wants a statue. Nothing too grand, just something symbolic to be unveiled at the Midsummer Festival. The assignment is handed to a renowned artisan named Lala, who once carved an entire battle scene on a pomegranate seed that you're summoned to consult. Symbolic of what? You ask. Xerxes shrugs. Movement, grace, modern virtue. Also pants. You nearly choke on your tea. Lala sketches for weeks. You help. So do 3 assistants, 1 textile historian, and a dancer who insists on modeling every pose while playing the flute. That be why the second week, a design emerges that a tall figure. Gender ambiguous. Arms raised in triumph, mid-stride. Robes swirling. And yes, beneath the swirling folds, visible, perfectly sculpted trousers. The piece is titled, "The Forward Step." You ask Xerxes if he's nervous. A little, he admits, but also excited. It's time. The festival arrives under a sky so blue it looks painted. The square fills with visitors from every corner of the empire. Traders, poets, farmers, and at least one very confused philosopher from Babylon. Drums roll. Curtains fall. Gasps ripple through the crowd. The statue is unlike anything they've seen. Classical, yet bold. Familiar, yet striking. And those pants, they shimmer subtly in the light. Carved from a rare, veined marble known for catching the sun. Silence, then applause. Hesitant, then thunderous. But not everyone claps. From the rear of the crowd, a voice calls out. It's an insult, an erosion of tradition. Heads turn. It's a member of the High Robe Council, gray-bearded, crimson-cloaked, nostrils flaring like battle horns. The tension could slice silk. Then, from the front row, Queen Artystone rises. Every eye follows her as she walks to the statue. She circles it. Slowly, thoughtfully. Then, she looks up and bows, just once the N-O words. And then she walks away. The applause resumes, now louder. More certain. A moment etched into memory like the statue itself. That night, at a quiet rooftop gathering, Xerxes lifts a cup and smiles. "We carve trousers in stone," he says. Everyone laughs. But the truth is deeper. You know now. It's done. The empire has accepted what was once hidden. Stitched. Feared, and turned it into marble. Persepolis no longer whispers. It walks. Robes still flutter in the wind. Yes, but now they part with pride to reveal every kind of legwear imaginable. The tailoring sanctum buzzes with commissions from satraps, generals, poets, and yes, even temple scribes asking for minimalist ankle huggers and desert tan. You just returned from a caravan tour across the Caspian coast. Everywhere you went, people greeted you not with titles or scrolls, but with bolts of cloth and questions like, "Does this fold flatter my gait?" Or "Can a man wrestle in these?" The Tailoring Guild elects you as its new head. Yared throws a celebration with tea and fruit pies shaped like breeches. The eunuch even writes you a scroll-length compliment, featuring 17 synonyms for elegant drape. But there's still one thing left undone. Prince Xerxes asks for your help drafting his first royal decree as emperor. His father has stepped down quietly, citing knee stiffness and political exhaustion. Xerxes wants to begin with a gesture, not law, not reform. A walk through the royal gardens, open to the public, wearing the very first imperial ceremonial uniform to include officially court-sanctioned trousers. You helped design it. It's understated, regal, with embroidery that tells the whole journey. Firelight, stitches, mountains, protests, and at the hem, a tiny goat stitched in silver thread. The day arrives. Crowds line the path. The sun is high, but cool breezes thread through the blossoms. He walks, every step quiet, but nothing about it is small. And so you stand, just off the path, watching him walk, a prince no longer, but an emperor who rewrote custom not with sword or speech, but with fabric and patience. Birds chirp gently in the trees. The garden hums with low laughter and rustling leaves. The people watch, not with awe, but with something softer, familiarity. He reaches the reflecting pool and pauses. A breeze catches the edge of his tunic. The trousers shimmer beneath, simple and sure, and in that moment, you feel it, not triumph, not revolution, but quiet rightness. The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. But somewhere between the firelight of that long-ago bonfire and the breeze rippling across this royal garden, something stitched itself into the empire's skin. Not defiance, not fashion, just freedom. Soft, worn, lived in. You closed your eyes. The sounds soften. Sandal on stone, silk brushing leg, distant flute. You breathe in and breathe out. You did it. Not alone, not loudly, but with care and thread. Now rest. Let the footsteps fade. Let the fabric settle. Let the story go quiet and sleep, knowing that even the mightiest empire can change one leg at a time. End of script. Sweet dreams.